Smith Jr. versus Artur Beterviev, Beterbelieve as I call him. This fight is a quite closely contested fight on paper. It looks really close, but I just see one winner, and I think it's the ferocious Beterbiev. I'm just going to give my prediction right there. I think this is too many tough fights for Joe Smith Jr. They call him the common man. You know, he's got that Kelly Pavlik style down. He's the common man. He's the, you know, the people's fighter. But I just don't think he's going to have enough for Beterbiev, however you want to pronounce it. I feel like the one with the better record of the two is Joe Smith Jr. He's fought 28, he's won 28 fights, and Beterbiev's won 17, but he's only had 17 and won every one. One has got really good fundamentals, and, you know, he's got great durability, and he's got power, which is Joe Smith Jr., and one just has, like, killer power, which I'm talking everything. It's sort of like that Golovkin thing, where everything he touches just basically is murderous. Whatever he touches, like, hits you with. It can be body, it can be combinations, and I just think he's too lethal for someone who's been around the block and fought a lot of hard wars. I think this is one war too many for Joe Smith Jr., and I think he's going to struggle in this fight. I'll be very surprised if he pulls off a win. It'd be great if he does. 114 and 20 on fight predictions, and that's for a reason. It's because I know my shizzle. Yeah. I'd like to think I do. Anyway, all egos aside, I think this is going to be a tough fight for both, but I just think one's just more murderous. That's the way I see it. One's just more deadly. One's just more of a breakdown fighter, sort of like Golovkin style. He's just going to break Joe Smith Jr. down. I feel like Smith Jr. does have power. He showed against Bernard Hopkins that he can hurt you. He showed against other fighters that he has power. But, you know, Beterbiev has knocked out Tavares Cloud, and he's beat some good fighters himself. He's not really need to show much of a resume because he's just destroyed everyone. Whereas I think Joe Smith Jr. has been in a few more wars, and at this stage, if he's lost to Bivol, which is never a bad thing because he just beat Canelo. But what Joe Smith Jr. is showing is he has got the power, but against X-Factor punchers, he'll struggle. And Beterbiev is an X-Factor puncher, which means that no matter what Joe Smith Jr. does, he won't be able to overcome Beterbiev, because Beterbiev just like has power in both hands, and wherever he hits you, he hurts you, and he just walks you down. And I think he's just going to walk Joe Smith Jr. down, unless he falls into any traps that Junior sets. I think one's got murderous power and one has got really good power. The difference of the two is going to be the murderous power, and that is going to be with Beterbiev. That's my take on it. I'm not at my best today, but it doesn't matter. I'm still doing this vid for the boxing fans. I'm going with Beterbiev. I think I'll be very shocked if Joe Smith Jr. gets out of this one alive. I think it's sort of reminds me of when was it Danny Rose fought Gary Russell Jr. I think it was that. There's certain fights where you feel like a fighter's, you know, gonna show that, you know, they've got it, but I just don't think he's gonna have enough. Smith Jr. Not in this fight. I think this fight is a bridge too far when you've been through a few wars already, and, you know, fights stopped on cuts and things like that. I just feel like this fight is a hard fight to bounce back into, even if you've been on a roll. And, you know, maybe a few fights before he took this, even though he's the more experienced, he's been in so many wars already that I don't feel like he's going to have enough to be able to. This is too much, I feel. I think Beterbiev is just too strong and too breakdown and too durable and too tough for Joe Smith Jr. I'm not saying Joe Smith Jr. isn't tough. We know he is, but it's what he can dish out won't be as much as what Beterbiev does. So I'm going with Beterviev by stoppage. I think he's going to stop Joe Smith Jr. in round 6 or 8. It could be even earlier. And that is my prediction. Anyway, I need another Lemsip. Peace. Lemsip and Massive Attack today. I'm not at my best, but I still pulled it through to do this little prediction video. And it should be 115 and 20 on predictions. We'll see. I'm going with Beterviev by knockout in round 6 or 8. Peace. Stoppage or knockout. I don't see it going to points. No way. Bye.